The week that changed my life began in the winter of 1944. At that time, I was serving with the United States Army somewhere deep inside a frozen European forest during the Second World War. Snow covered every road, every broken tree, and every abandoned trench. Even during daylight, the forest looked strangely lifeless, as if nature itself had stopped breathing. Our unit had been ordered to protect an old, underground military bunker that had been built years before the war. Officially, it was just another observation and communication post. Unofficially, everyone treated it like a place that should never have been used. I had heard strange rumors before arriving there. Soldiers who had been assigned to the bunker often requested transfers after only a single night. Others suddenly became quiet, refused to explain anything, and never volunteered for that duty again. No one ever gave a clear reason. Some simply avoided looking toward the bunker whenever its name was mentioned. At first, I assumed exhaustion had damaged their nerves. War could do terrible things to the human mind. Fear, hunger, freezing temperatures, and constant artillery fire were enough to make anyone imagine things that never existed. That was exactly what I believed. Until I spent my first night there. The bunker itself looked older than anything around it. I'm on duty there today, and I'm quite excited to uncover the mystery here. Its concrete walls were stained with moisture. Rust covered every metal hinge. The entrance door felt unusually heavy, as though it had not been opened in decades. Inside, the air smelled of wet stone, machine oil, and something else I could never identify. Not rotten, not chemical, just old, far older than the war itself. Electric lights still worked, although they flickered every few minutes. Each flicker lasted only a second. Yet every time darkness swallowed the room, I felt as though something had moved just beyond the edge of my vision. Whenever the lights returned, nothing was there. I kept telling myself it was fatigue. Nothing more. My duty was simple. Stay inside, monitor the radio equipment, record unusual activity. Wait until sunrise. The hours passed slowly. Outside, the wind scraped across the trees with a sound almost like distant whispers. Occasionally, snow slid from the bunker roof with a dull thud that echoed through the underground corridors. Everything seemed explainable. Everything seemed normal. Until I checked the wall clock. It was exactly 2:17 a.m. For no particular reason, I looked toward the hallway leading deeper into the bunker. It was completely empty. I remember that clearly, because only a few seconds later, there were footprints, fresh footprints, dark wet boot prints. They began in the middle of the hallway, not at a doorway, not near a staircase, right in the center of the concrete floor. As though someone had appeared from nowhere, the prints continued slowly toward my room, one after another, perfectly spaced, perfectly clear. I stared without blinking. There was no sound, no breathing, no footsteps, only the footprints. When they reached the doorway, they stopped. There were no returning prints, no sign that anyone had left. They simply ended, right outside my door. Every instinct told me to walk over and inspect them. Instead, I remained seated. My body refused to move. The silence inside that bunker suddenly felt heavier than the concrete above it. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Finally, I forced myself to stand. My flashlight shook in my hand as I walked toward the doorway. The floor was dry, completely dry. There were no footprints, not even a stain. Nothing. I searched every corridor, every storage room, every stairwell. No one, no broken doors, no hidden tunnels, nothing. I returned to my desk, convinced my own eyes had betrayed me. But something still felt wrong. The radio had remained silent all night. Yet when I looked at the notebook beside the transmitter, several pages of the notebook were torn, and some were stained with blood. I asked all the soldiers if anyone had seen anything or tampered with my notebook, but they all said no. A sense of curiosity began to stir within me, though I did not reveal it to anyone and kept the matter to myself. The next morning, I convinced myself that everything I had seen during the first night had been caused by exhaustion. I had barely slept for 2 days before arriving at the bunker. My mind had every reason to make mistakes. That explanation was enough, at least until sunset. Our company had lost several men during the previous week, and replacements had not arrived. Because of the shortage, only 2 soldiers were assigned to the bunker that night. One remained near the radio room. I was ordered to watch the forest from the observation platform built above the bunker entrance. The cold was worse than the night before. Fresh snow covered every trail leading into the forest. Visibility stretched for hundreds of yards beneath the moonlight. Nothing moved. No enemy patrol. No wildlife. Not even the sound of birds. The silence felt unnatural, almost organized. I lifted my binoculars and slowly searched the tree line. Broken branches, snow-covered rocks, frozen bushes. Everything appeared exactly where it should be. Then, something interrupted the pattern. Far beyond the trees stood a dark figure. It wasn't moving. It wasn't hiding. It simply stood there. At that distance, I couldn't make out a face or a uniform, only the outline of what looked like a soldier. I lowered my binoculars. The figure disappeared. I immediately raised them again. The figure was back, standing in exactly the same place. I repeated this several times. Every time I looked with my own eyes, there was nothing. Every time I looked through the binoculars, the figure returned. It never moved. It never waved. It simply watched the bunker. I told myself it was an optical illusion caused by frozen lenses. That explanation lasted less than 5 minutes. A strong gust of wind swept across the clearing. Snow drifted across the open ground. For just a moment, the figure seemed closer. Not by much, only a few yards. I checked the distance markers placed around the bunker. Nothing had changed. Yet something inside me insisted that it had moved. I stopped using the binoculars. Looking any longer felt like a mistake. When my shift ended, I climbed back inside the bunker. The heavy steel door closed behind me with a deep metallic echo. The underground corridors felt warmer than outside, but they didn't feel safer. The electric lights flickered again. Once, twice, then they remained steady. As I walked toward the radio room, I noticed something unusual. The condensation on the concrete floor had formed a trail of wet boot prints. Unlike the previous night, these prints had an obvious beginning. They came from the deepest storage corridor. I followed them slowly. Every step increased the feeling that someone else had entered the bunker. The footprints stopped, outside an old storage room that had supposedly been empty for years. The wooden shelves inside were covered in dust. Rusted ammunition boxes lay untouched. Nothing appeared disturbed. Then I noticed one detail. The dust near the far wall had been cleared in the shape of a perfect rectangle, as though something heavy had rested there until very recently. But whatever had been there was gone. I searched every corner. Nothing. No hidden passage. No damaged wall. No sign of forced entry. Just silence. Later that night, while checking the ventilation tunnel, I heard 3 slow metallic knocks. One, then another, then a third. The sound came from somewhere inside the walls. Not above me. Not outside. Inside the concrete itself. I waited. The knocking never came again. Around 3 a.m., the radio suddenly filled with loud static. No voices, no coded messages. Only harsh bursts of interference that lasted nearly 20 seconds before, stopping as suddenly as they had begun. When the silence returned, I looked toward the bunker entrance. The steel door was slightly open, only a few inches. I knew I had locked it. Snow blew through the narrow opening. I walked over and pulled the door shut. Outside, the snow was untouched. No footprints, no tire tracks, no signs that anyone had approached. The forest stood completely still. But far beyond the tree line, for just 1 second, I thought I saw that same dark figure again. Only this time, it no longer seemed to be watching the bunker. It seemed to be waiting for me. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. And deep inside, I realized something I had refused to believe before. The soldiers who avoided this bunker were not cowards. They had seen enough to know that some places should never be guarded after dark. Third day. The third night began differently. I was no longer trying to convince myself that everything had a logical explanation. Too many things had happened. Too many questions had no answers. Just before midnight, the bunker lost power. Every light went out at once. Only my flashlight remained. The silence became almost unbearable. As I searched the main corridor, I noticed a cold draft coming from a concrete wall that should have been solid. The air wasn't coming through a crack. It felt as if the wall itself was breathing. I pushed against the old metal shelves nearby. They moved just enough to reveal a narrow steel door hidden behind them. The door had no handle, only rust, and a faded military warning painted across it. Sealed, do not open. The lock had already been broken years before. Slowly, I pushed the door inward. Behind it was a narrow staircase leading deep beneath the bunker. The air below was colder than the winter outside. Every step echoed through the darkness. At the bottom, I found a small underground room. There were no weapons, no supplies, only dozens of military helmets arranged neatly across the floor. Each one carried the name of an American soldier. Many names had dates beside them. Every date matched the day that soldier had disappeared. Then my flashlight stopped on the final helmet. There was no dust on it, only one fresh name, my own. For several seconds, I couldn't move. Then a deep metallic sound echoed somewhere above me. The bunker had gone completely silent. I turned toward the staircase. The steel door was slowly closing by itself. I ran. By the time I reached it, only a narrow gap remained. I forced myself through and slammed the door behind me. The light suddenly returned. Everything looked normal again. At sunrise, I reported the hidden room. A search team entered the bunker that afternoon. They found nothing. No hidden door, no staircase, no underground chamber. The wall was solid concrete. Months later, the bunker was permanently abandoned. Military records simply described the location as unsafe for continued occupation. I never returned. Even now, I still remember one detail that no report ever explained. When I left that bunker for the last time, my boots left only one set of footprints in the snow, as if someone else had walked out before me.